He will see in Bakersfield, San Jose. We'll see in Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. You might find this to be interesting. Here's Dr. John Campbell with the latest research on this year's flu shot. Does it work? Does it not work? Does it make you more likely to get sick? The answer just may surprise you. Or will it?
Hello and welcome to this talk. Now let me give you the bottom line on this video so you can decide if you want to watch. Large study at the Cleveland Clinic found out that the flu vaccine, the influenza vaccine over last winter, wasn't that effective. In fact, it had a negative efficacy of 26.9%. In other words, if you took this flu vaccine, you were 26.9% more likely to get influenza.
Oh! Who knew? Who knew taking the flu shot would make you sicker?
That's the opposite of what I thought.
That's the opposite of what I thought. It would make you more likely. I don't want to say it would make you sicker. It would make you more likely to get the flu.
Right. So it's like, what did he say? It's like a symptoms thing. Because we did a story
it's
about this before.
negative efficacy. That's right. What they call it. So you have an almost 27% more likely to get the flu if you got this year's flu shot. Congratulations.
So it's not that it doesn't work. It's actually worse than not working.
It's worse.
You're telling me.
Now, unfortunately, the paper doesn't give us details on how much money the pharmaceutical industry made from selling this vaccine with negative efficacy, nor does it list the side effects that occurred from this vaccine. But I would say that the side effects from this vaccine will be considerably less than it were if it was a mRNA type vaccine. It's not. It's a dead virus type.
So that's the good news. The silver lining is it's not an mRNA vaccine, so it's not as bad for you, according to John Campbell.
So get it.
Vaccine. Now, this is from the same group as gave us this excellent study in 2023. This was the study that showed negative efficacy for the COVID vaccine as well. In fact, we can maybe just look at one of their charts here. This is one of their charts from that study. What it's showing is that up and down here we have cumulative incidence of COVID-19, increasing incidence of COVID-19. Here we have the number of days, and here we have the number of doses of vaccine. Now, I know you can't see it on the screen, but that's 0 doses there. That's 1 dose there, 2 doses there, and 3 doses higher up.
So this is the people who didn't get any vaccine. They have the lowest incidence of COVID.
That's where I am.
And then for each increment of doses of the vax you got, you had a higher rate of getting it.
But what could this mean?
What could this mean?
Now, what this shows is that people who had no doses of vaccine had less cumulative incidence of COVID-19. Those that had 1 vaccine dose had more than those that had 0. Those that had 2 vaccine doses had more incidence than those that had had 1 dose. And those that had 3 doses had a higher cumulative incidence of those that had no doses over that 100, basically a 6-month period or more. Now, hard to make up negative vaccine efficacy.
Hard to make up.
Of course, that's without looking at all the adverse reactions and the side effects. Not only that original Cleveland study gave us this rather useful graphic here. And this shows the effectiveness of natural immunity. So last infected during the Omicron phase, then less cumulative incidence of COVID-19. Last infected during the pre-Omicron era with the older virus, they get more cumulative incidence, and not previously infected, the highest incidence. So we see that those infected most recently with the most similar virus were least likely to get a new infection. So they showed us that already. So negative efficacy of COVID vaccines. Now they've shown us negative efficacy of influenza vaccines. Let's look at some of the detail here. So that's the bottom line stuff there. Effectiveness of the coronavirus disease 2019 bivalent vaccine, that's the one we've just looked at. The higher the number of vaccines previously received, the higher the risk of contracting COVID-19. So if you want to maximize your chances of getting COVID-19, according to the Cleveland data, have as many COVID vaccines as possible, and that way you're more likely to catch COVID. Again, not looking at the side effects, just looking at the incidence of new disease. Effectiveness of influenza vaccine during the 24 to 25 respiratory viral season. The study was to evaluate the effectiveness of influenza vaccine during the the last flu season that we're just coming out of, hopefully, now. Now, the method that they used here, employees of the Cleveland Clinic and employment in Ohio on October the 1st, 2024 were included. Cumulative incidence of influenza is what they looked for. Whether they were vaccinated was one group, or whether they were unvaccinated against influenza. This is flu vaccine, remember, so they can compare one group against the other. This is good research methodology. And they found out that those that were vaccinated got more influenza. So people that had, this is true, people that had the influenza vaccine got more influenza. It was a negative immunity of getting up to 27.
That means it's working.
It's a bit like a Monty Python sketch, this, isn't it?
I thought so,
gives
yes.
you more of the thing it's supposed to be protecting you against. All right, let's carry on. Comparison over the following 25 weeks. Now, the results, and this is the influenza vaccine we're talking about now, remember, over the last influenza season. So out of 53,000 employees, 43,857, 82.1% received the influenza vaccine by the end of the study, working age adults. There was 1,079 cases of influenza, 2.2% of that 43,000 people. So pretty good numbers. Now, these are large numbers. In research, you can do good analysis on numbers like that and get really good statistics out of it, which, of course, they have done. The cumulative incidence, that is the number of new cases of influenza, was similar for the vaccinated and unvaccinated states early on. So you think, well, why bother giving it? Because there's no benefit. Then it actually gets worse. I'll just show you the graph here, actually. This is the graphic here. So here we have people that are not vaccinated. So well, again, cumulative incidence of influenza up and down there. Weeks of the study along here. Now, initially, those that were vaccinated and not vaccinated, pretty well the same.
The same.
But then, as time goes on, we notice that those that were not vaccinated have a lower cumulative incidence of influenza than those that were vaccinated. The vaccinated were more likely to get influenza. Influenza vaccine makes it more likely to get influenza in this study. But over the course of the study, the cumulative incidence of influenza increased more rapidly among the vaccinated than in the unvaccinated. And this analysis was adjusted for age, sex, clinical nursing, job, employment location. Risk of influenza was significantly higher for the vaccinated compared to the unvaccinated. Hazard ratio
Significantly higher.
27% more likely, approximately. Now, they were 95% sure the hazard ratio was between 1.07 and 1.51. So definitely more likely to get influenza if you had the influenza vaccine. The probability of that result arising by chance was 7 in 1,000. So very unlikely that this result would arise by chance. And the 95% confident it was between minus 55 to minus 6.6. So clear negative efficacy. And of course, they came out with a figure of, the overall figure, what was it? 26.9%. More likely to get influenza. Now, these results are generalizable to related healthy adults in the United States, which is a major target for adult influenza vaccine efforts. So you could say, okay, this study was in Ohio. It's clearly true in Ohio. It's not true in California. It's not true in England. It's not true anywhere else. Well, they don't comment in England, actually. But what they say is the results are generalizable to relatively healthy adults in the USA. So in other words, if you did this anywhere in the USA, you would have got the same results, or very likely got the same results. It's just that the Cleveland Clinic researchers bothered to do the work, which is a major target for adult influenza vaccine efforts. So we can assume from this that there was way more cases of influenza, at least in working age adults, throughout the United States, and by extension, potentially, all countries in the world, as a result of the influenza vaccination program. Although no studies were done in Northern Ohio, there is little reason to assume that effectiveness of the vaccine would have been different in a different geographical region within the continental USA. This is generalizable. Right, their conclusion to this pretty appalling study, really, appalling finding. This study found that influenza vaccination of working-aged adults was associated with a higher risk of influenza during the 2024-2025 respiratory viral season, suggesting that the vaccine has not been effective in preventing influenza this season. In fact, it actually seems to have caused more cases. I am therefore pleased I didn't get the influenza vaccine last autumn, because it would have increased my chances, according to this data, of getting influenza, which is a remarkably unpleasant disease. Let's just look briefly at something to do with that. Influenza, of course, it's a respiratory viral infection. It caused 145,000 deaths worldwide, apparently, in 2017. So not to be poo-pooed. Influenza is a serious illness, and you feel terrible. 1918 case fatality rate 2.5%, more than 50 million deaths worldwide. There's a seasonal pattern to the illness, of course. Annual influenza vaccine is often recommended. by our regulatory agencies. The fact that our regulatory agencies are largely funded by the pharmaceutical industry, of course, doesn't bear any influence on their thinking whatsoever. They are completely independent bodies. At least I'm sure that's what they would tell you. No evidence that corruption's involved here at all. No evidence. So the vaccine they were using was trivalent inactivated.
I like how John Campbell sounds like me and Kurt now. Isn't that great? No,
Oh my God.
no evidence that there's corruption happening. They're
Okay, attention, shirts for Kurt's charity. I found negative efficacy will be the next band shirt that I need.
Negative efficacy.
That is the greatest phrase I've ever heard. So the phrase for this is worse than not taking it is negative efficacy.
Well, see,
that's just beautiful, man. Like,
and the thing that you don't want to overlook is that there are side effects to vaccines. And if you just go ahead and get the flu, there's no side, there's just the flu. But if you get the vaccine, you run the risk of a side effect plus a higher rate of getting the flu.
I mean, I would say that's the effect. Look, it's a lot like the war on drugs and terror, and we got more of all of those things from it.
Yep.
There's one thing that they all do. They just do one trick over and over, where we're going to fight a thing, and somehow we are inundated with way more of the thing through your fighting it. How does that work?
Vaccine, 2 influenza A virus types. It was H3N2 and H1N1, and influenza B. So these are the more sort of the influenza A is the more outbreak sort of epidemic one. This is the more sort of persistent endogenous one. So the influence against those. Efficacy will vary depending on prognostication. So what they do is, of course, it takes a few months to make these vaccines. So they basically think, well, what's the flu strain going to be next winter? Okay, it's going to be this, this, and this. In this case, they thought, well, it's going to be H1N1. It's going to be N3, N2. Let's make the vaccine against that. Now, we know that this is generalizable throughout the mainland United States. What we don't know is if this was true 2023-2024 season. We don't know whether it's going to be true 25-26 flu season. Be interesting to find out, wouldn't it? But we do know negative efficacy in the 2024-2025 flu season, consistent completely with what Professor Robert Clancy taught us last week. I'll put the link to that excellent video on negative vaccine efficacy, consistent with data on the COVID vaccine from Cleveland, consistent with data on the COVID vaccine from Quebec in Canada, and now negative efficacy for the influenza vaccine from the Cleveland Clinic. Now, my concern here is, I've just put a note there, my concern is here. People will say, you know what, these dead viral vaccines aren't working very well. What we're going to have to do is change from mushed up dead virus vaccine, attenuated dead viral antigenic challenge vaccines, to mRNA vaccines. Do you see the logic there? Given that these current dead viral vaccines aren't working, hey, we need to go to the mRNA influenza vaccine. A prospect which personally I find
horrifying.
Horrific.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's hope that's not the case. But for now, we know that negative, basically 27%. Let's get it right. Negative 26.9% efficacy in the working age population of having the influenza vaccine.
They're going to make your kids
healthcare
into
intervention
autistics.
Keep getting them.
That's what they're doing. They're turning your kids into genderless, so you don't have to worry about sexual harassment at work because they don't really have a gender to speak of, and they love all products, and they obey orders and compartmentalize when they're told and only focus on one thing. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious what the plan is just from this. You don't have to look at like Alex Jones or something.
Makes of having the influenza vaccine.
So
a healthcare intervention that makes it more likely you get what it's supposed to be protecting for, while opening us up to potential adverse reactions. Let me know what you think. For now, as always, thank you for watching.
He's got a video hour-long negative vaccine efficacy.
I never questioned vaccines before they told me I better never question them. I've never even thought it was possible that they're not working.
Never questioned.
I'm not against them in principle.
No, I got all my vaccines. I never would have ever questioned the vaccine until COVID. And
I never questioned Israel until October 7th. That's Israel's fault, not mine, because I'm openly prejudiced against Muslims. How many times can I say it? I would never listen. Do you think I'm a bad person that would listen to the Arab side of the story? No, sir. I'm a red-blooded American, and I'm prejudiced in favor of Israel. And they screwed up that bad, Jimmy. You understand? That's not my fault that you lost me because you pocked it up. Jews told me about what you're doing.
He will see in Bakersfield, San Jose. We'll see in Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.